new link or something?
Got the input. It's on my screen.
We have minutes for the planning board?
Plugged in.
I don't think I saw any.
Okay.
Do you need to hit input on the clicker?
Oh,
Like,
maybe
is it on
that's
a
it.
different-
You're right. Maybe it's on a different.
We'll just push those off.
Okay.
HDMI or something?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Litchfield Planning Board meeting of November 1st, 2022. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call of members. Michael Proto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Ron Stevens, member.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectman's Rep.
Okay. James Buffetti is not here this evening. He will not be present. And Sam Terrell is not here. Just to make that for the record. We do have Jay Mankara, our circuit rider for NRPC. Welcome. And Joe McKibben, welcome back from vacation, our planning board administrator. Are there any public input items for non-agenda items this evening, items not on the agenda? Yes, come forward, state your name and address. And
Charbel, 401 Charles Bancroft Highway. I'm here about my friendly neighbors at Mel's. So, where do I start? So, they have signed, we have a signed ordinance in this town. The signed ordinance is pretty clear, and it's an ordinance, so it's not something that the planning board or anybody can just approve. It's an ordinance, so when you exceed the ordinance, you have to get a variance. So I would ask the board, if they're gonna be open a couple more days this coming weekend, just take a ride by and see the signs. I mean, they have a sign, and I know it's a selectman and the zoning administrators thing, but I guess I want to point out to the planning board, I keep saying the same thing. You guys approve a plan and they do what they want. And we have the same situation. So you approved a plan, and nowhere on that plan does it show a sign on a building that says beer and food. It's not there. Okay, and if you drive by and look at the building, there's a big 4x8 sign that says beer and food. There's signs on fences, there's signs everywhere that don't, as far as I'm concerned, don't comply with our ordinance, because it's pretty clear what our ordinance says for signs. So I guess I'd ask the board to just drive by and look. It even talks about off-site signs. So when signs are on someone else's property, to me that means it's an off-site sign. And they have off-site signs. So more than anything, I want you to look at it so you can see that when you approve a plan, they do what they want anyway. So I'm asking you to do that. We have regulations when it comes to put up fences. Fencing says that the finished side of the fence has to be towards the abutting property. It's clear in the regulation, okay? It's there. Go look at the fences they put up. Granted, they're temporary, but they still put up a fence. And it's up there year after year. They should know what the regulations are, but again, they do what they want. Lighting. They don't even come close to meeting the criteria for our lighting. If you go through the regulations, go look at the lighting. It says it can't glare onto abutting property, and it clearly does. I mean, just drive by. So there's all these things that when they're at the planning board, they say, yep, we'll comply, and then they do what they want. Because there's no one to enforce it, because nobody's working when they're open for Spooky World. So that no one's working, there isn't a zoning administrator working on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, or Sunday night, or Monday night, when they're open, the days that they're open. So no one ever knows. They park wherever they want. They park, they were parking behind the kiddie thing this fall. They were parking out there, and they said, oh, we have an approved plan for that. Well, their approved plan also shows a parking lot being paved. They never did it. Their plan wasn't approved at that point because they didn't get the variances they needed in time. But they still did it. They do what they want. They continue to do that. It just never stops, you know, and so I just asked the board to go look at it, visualize, see the stuff that's there if you haven't already, or if you haven't paid attention to it. Take a look this weekend, because they'll be open, and see, so the next time they come in, I think the board has to come up with a way to get them to do what they want when they come in. If they never come in again, well, then it's up to the selectman and the zoning administrator. But when they come back in again, there has to be things. There's people walking down the side of the road. They said they wouldn't let that happen. Clearly, people walking down the side of the road. The neighbors have cars parking in front of them, charging a fee. I guess I don't blame the neighbors. If they can get away with all the things they're getting away with, why shouldn't the neighbors get some money for what they're
The
doing?
neighbors are getting letters, have gotten letters.
I understand. I know they're getting them, but it's the same thing. They're getting away with stuff that's not right. You know, so I would ask that, so just so the next time they come in, because when they come in again, I'll be back here again for the same thing. But that's all before they're done for the year, so you can see it. And look at the lighting. I think the lighting's important, and I think the signage that they're doing is important. That's it.
Okay.
All done complaining.
So does Jeff go down? Did he go down at night to see?
Has he been
I don't.
notified?
I've talked to him several times. I don't know.
The one thing Jeff does wanna get from them is
Yeah.
a Spooky World plan with everything just Spooky World on one plan. Because we have all these plans
Right.
But
floating around.
the latest plan is the plan.
Right,
Because they upgraded. So the latest plan, whatever's on any plan prior to that shouldn't count, doesn't matter, because they did an updated plan.
Right,
And that updated plan should have everything that's approved. Nothing else. Everything 10 years ago don't matter. None of it matters. It's no different, you know, the zoning board gave them a variance, which is fine, that's their choice, they did, for 100 cars. But who's gonna enforce it? They can still park 150 cars in there if they want, or whatever they want to park. There's no one to enforce it. It's always that way. There's no one to enforce it. No different. When they came here, they said they were gonna only do online sales. You can go back to your minutes and you'll see that. They sell tickets at a ticket booth.
They changed that?
You know, so, and that's okay. I mean, whatever. They gotta sell their tickets and, you know, but my point is they just do what they want, time and time again. Get it approved, do what I want. No
We
one
have-
to enforce it.
We have other businesses that run at night. We have the seafood restaurant, you know. So I'll talk with the board, see if some kind of a spot check or something can be done, a
Somebody-
routine, you know.
Somebody gotta do something.
So I don't want to just be picking on, you know what I mean? But I'm saying, we have other businesses at night that can,
I think
Off
every
hours.
business should fall into the same criteria, whether it's my business or any business, you know? And I'll say to you the same thing. When I have outings at Pest Conway, I don't put signs out on the side of the road that says golf outing or golf event or whatever. I don't do that. I mean, I own probably 1.5 miles frontage on 3A, so I can put it on all my own property. We don't do it. I mean, look at this, any place that I have a small sign. That's my choice. I could have a bigger sign, but I'd rather have a small sign. And they need as many signs as they have because they have in my opinion, they have a bad site plan. So that's why they need tons of signs everywhere, because they have a bad site plan. And how you get your traffic to your main parking lot. So if they'd done it different, they've done it properly, they wouldn't need to have all the offside stuff that they have. But enough of that. So took enough of your time, but you know where I'm coming from.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, look at that.
Okay. Right. Anybody else for public input? Seeing nobody here. Close public input. On non-agenda items, we'll go to item number 1, which is tonight's public hearing on subdivision site plan amendments. These are to amend the submittal review dates to be consistent from 15 days to 21 days throughout the ordinances. Condition for disapproval of an application, sections 140.3 and 320.10. Conditions of approval, section 140.7 and 850.2. 850.11, 1.1, recording of plans within 60 days of approval, and section 850.3 requiring as-built plans for certain roadways or common driveways. Jay, did you want to say anything before I open it up to public comment?
I can run through them if you'd like.
Sure.
My intent was to show them up on the screen. I apologize. I can't seem to connect for some reason, so I'll just go through and read them if that's okay with everybody.
Okay.
So most of these changes, we have a consistency change, but most of these changes are in direct response to House Bill 1661, which made several changes to planning board procedures. And so these are reflected both in the subdivision and the site plan regulations. So I'm going to start with the site plan regulations, and I'll just kind of follow along. If you're looking at your drafts or the regulations, we start at section 130.1, which is preliminary conceptual consultation phase, and that's on page 42 of the site plan regulations. And this is just a very simple change. Right now, it requires that plans be submitted 15 days prior to the meeting that the case is going to be heard at. And we propose changing that to 21 days to be consistent with the rest of our submission requirements. I think that was just overlooked at one point. Same change is made to section 130.2, design review phase, changed from 15 days to 21. No substantive changes in that section. And then we move down to section 140.3. And one of the changes that was made is that projects are declared to be projects of regional impact. And the board has an additional 30 days within which to review them. So the 65-day window is expanded to 95 days. So this section is just amended to reflect that 95-day period. So it reads on the date of acceptance, I'm sorry, I missed it. The date of acceptance recorded in the minutes begins the 65-day review period, except for projects of regional impact. The review period for projects of regional impact is 95 days. Pretty straightforward. And then another change that was made is that because of the tightened timeframes, arguably, that the planning board may deny a project, may deny acceptance of a project without prejudice. And what that means is that an applicant can submit substantially the same project. Right now, under current law, if the planning board denies an application, including acceptance, an applicant can't submit substantially the same application. So this changes that. So it inserts the language, if the board determines that it lacks sufficient information to make a final decision on an application, excuse me, I got to click up a window, and the applicant does not consent to an extension, the board may, in its discretion, deny the application without prejudice, in which case the applicant may resubmit the same application or a substantially similar application. And again, that's parroting language that comes out of the statute. Currently, if the 65 days is about to run and the planning board has not acted and no extension has been granted, then the selectmen, an applicant can go to the selectmen can direct the planning board to act within 30 days. And then if the planning board doesn't act within that 30 days, then the selectmen basically can approve the application. That's been struck from the law and replaced with different language. And essentially, the way it is now is I'm sorry, I'll take it back, I'll explain it a little bit more. The planning board can apply to the selectmen under current law for an extension, and that's no longer true. So all that language is now struck. And that, I'm sorry, that is section 140.4. So I am moving on down. And we have a few places where this same language comes in. So I'm going to, I'm now on section 140.7. Once again, under section 140.7, we just make an amendment to reflect that the review period for a project of regional impact is 95 days. And this is where the language that I just referenced comes into play. So I'm just going to read this section as it stands amended. If the board has not taken action on a completed application within 65 days of its acceptance, or 95 days for projects of regional impact, and has not obtained an extension, the selectmen shall certify on the applicant's application that the plat is approved. Such a certification shall constitute final approval for all purposes, including filing and recording under RSA 674-37 and 676-18, and court review under RSA 677-15. And again, this is what I was alluding to before. The language that has been struck is the language that says the applicant may obtain an order from the Board of Selectmen directing the planning board to act on the application within 30 days. If the board fails to act on the order, the selectmen shall have 40 days to certify that the plat is approved unless non-compliance with some specific provision of site plan regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all been struck. It is simply replaced with, if the board doesn't act, the selectmen shall certify. This is all language that comes out of the statute. We have to reflect it. The reality is, we've never been in a position, I've never known any board to be in a position where you, the 65 days runs and you don't have an extension granted by the applicant. That's pretty rare.
What drove this bill to happen?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, what
Nobody
made
has
this bill?
ever
Absolutely. You know, honestly, I don't know. I think that there's a perception that it's an issue, and I really don't know. A lot of this came out of a housing commission. There was a statewide housing commission that was created, and part of the thrust of that commission was that part of the problem in terms of housing development in the state is caused by local regulation that's seen as an impediment. Somehow they zoomed in on this, and I honestly really don't know why. 1661 was considered what they called the Housing Toolbox Bill. So, yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, maybe there's, people who are more involved in this and know why, but I really don't know why they made these changes, because they really don't do anything, substantive that I'm aware of.
So if you get to the holidays, November, December, 65 days is quick.
Well, I mean, but it was 65 days before, it's still 65 days now. They've just changed that kind of language of you can go to the selectmen to get them to tell the planning board to act. If they didn't, well, I mean, that's just something that doesn't happen. So I don't know why.
They didn't come out of any specific case or?
No. It's odd.
Am I hearing this right, that we have no choice, the Board of Selectmen has to approve it? Did I hear that right?
Right. In the unlikely
strategy.
event, unlike the event that the 65 days has run, no extension has been granted, then yes, then the applicant can go to the selectmen, and the selectmen have to certify that the plan is approved.
Why wouldn't a board extend it, though?
They would.
That's what I mean, I don't understand.
That's why I'm saying it's trying to address a problem that I don't think exists, but nevertheless, it's what it says.
So, but does the applicant have to agree to extend it?
Applicant does have to agree to an extension, yes.
So the applicant could say, I don't agree to this extension, and then just force their plan to be approved?
No, that would be up to the board. The board could say, okay, we're just not gonna act, but more than likely, if applicant is not going to agree to an extension and the board isn't ready to approve it, then the board can deny it.
Okay. So it's not forcing it.
Yeah, it's not saying you have to
think
approve
that
it
there's
in 65
still-
days.
No action taken.
Right, you have to act in 65 days, so if the board doesn't, if for whatever reason the board just said that they weren't gonna do anything,
No quorum.
I-
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have a quorum
Yeah.
for 65 days,
Yeah.
that would be an issue.
that would be, that
Right.
would be an issue, because without a quorum, you can't,
Can't-
but
Right.
Right,
the whole thing's, the developer's always gonna give you always gonna agree. I mean, in 40
Always.
years, I've never heard of anybody not agreeing,
I've never heard of anybody not agreeing to an extension.
Okay.
because the alternative is you deny it.
Right,
Even if, well, like the Amazon application in Hudson, the board had to approve it because everything, there was nothing to deny it for, right? So I'm just wondering if something like that, if the applicant didn't want to extend it, the board had nothing to deny it on, then it's basically forcing it through, right?
No, because if the board isn't ready to approve it, obviously you don't have enough information. You haven't
Just wonder-
satisfied your information.
right, so the other
I
provision,
guess who decides that it's satisfied, I guess.
the
The
board,
Right.
regulations.
right,
Well, that's what I'm saying, is the Amazon, by the end of it anyway, the Amazon application was, there was no way they could deny it because everything adhered to the regulations. So it just, I don't know, it just makes me
right. But-
nervous, I guess, that they extended that, I don't know how that went on for
But
like
that's
over a
always
year,
the
right?
case, if something meets your regulations, you can't deny it.
Right.
If it doesn't
Right.
matter, if
I'm just-
it meets it,
I'm just wondering if that would have just gotten approved in 2 months instead of, or rather 3 months, instead of the year plus that it took to kind of hash through everything.
Well, no,
they
'cause-
didn't, they couldn't have had all their information, and so it didn't get through all the review process, so that's why, as a developer, because the plans aren't complete, they keep changing. So when
Yeah.
the plans keep changing, as a developer, you're gonna grant the extension because your engineers, or the engineer that's reviewing it found all these problems, they didn't get the plans changed, so you grant the extension.
Right. And in the case of Amazon, the applicants did grant those extensions, which is why it went on that long.
And they had
Right.
lots of studies they had to have done.
Yeah, but that is also why, going back to the language in section 140.3 that was added, that's why the statute also included that if the board determines that it lacks sufficient information to make a final decision on an application, and the applicant does not extend to an extension, the board may, in its discretion, deny the application without prejudice, in which case the applicant may resubmit the same application, or substantially a similar application. So in that scenario, you're not necessarily saying it doesn't comply, you're saying you don't have enough information. You ask the applicant, are you willing to grant an extension? If they say no, then you can deny it
Based
on the
on-
grounds of not having
Okay.
sufficient information.
Okay.
And this is specific to acceptance. So-
No, it's, or approval.
Or approval.
Yeah, well, the 65 days is, the acceptance is still 30 days. This is approval.
Okay,
Well, I should say final action.
final action.
Might not be approval. All right, and then this is another substantive issue. This comes in under section 140.7A. I mean, again, this is something that I think the board already does in its notices of decision. But I'll just read the language and then the language that was inserted. Existing language says approval. Approval of the site plan shall be by affirmative vote of the majority of the board present at the meeting. And then we insert a new line that says the decision shall include specific written findings of fact that support the decision. Again, we already do, that's not changing the board's practices. The board already does a notice of decision. But this is clarifying that you do have to have a notice of decision with specific written findings. Whether it's a decision to approve or deny, you have to have those kind of findings within it. Again, I think we do that, but nevertheless, we'll reflect that in the regulations.
Is that a typo?
I'm sorry,
Is that
maybe.
a typo?
Where?
After the first, under A, this is the decision shall, and go on, and this is the next sentence, the plat is certified.
I had that same question
Says
last
site
time.
plan
It's another
plat.
word for.
You want site plan?
Yeah, it's
Site
another word
plan.
for plan.
It's the same
Really?
thing.
Right.
I was an English major, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a kind of an old term.
Okay.
All right, and then moving on, we have a new section, subsection C. So this is section 140.7. We just amended A, now we're on to C, and this is new language regarding disapproval. Disapproval. If the board determines that it lacks sufficient information to make a final decision on an application and the applicant does not consent to an extension pursuant to our section 140.4, the board may in its discretion deny the application without prejudice, etc. Again, this is the same language that we already had. We're just adding it under this subsection as well because this is a section that addresses approvals. And moving on, that's it for site plan regulations. And I can, unless there's questions on this, move over to subdivision regulations.
Any questions for Jay?
And you're gonna see the exact same themes coming up. So once again, we're in the subdivision regulations, we're on section 300 procedure, going down to section 310.01. And once again, we're under conceptual consultation. We're changing the submission period from 15 days to 21 days prior to the meeting for consistency. And under subsection 310.02, design review, again, the exact same change, 15 days goes to 21. And then I am going down, this is not related to House Bill 1661. We're down to section 320.04. Really, this is our practice now, but the statutes were changed a few years ago to allow the town to post public hearing notices on the website rather than only in the newspaper. So we're just amending this to say, public notice shall be posted in 2 public places and printed in a newspaper of general circulation in the town or posted on the town's website at least 10 days prior to the date of the meeting. That doesn't say it gives us the option of doing either, but needless to say, it's way easier to put it on the website than post it in the paper.
Where does Facebook fall on that? Litchfield, what's up?
No.
Doesn't count.
Good. Just want to make sure. It's a subset.
Yeah, it's gotta be the actual website itself. And you really need it, you want it on the front page.
Okay.
And then once again, this is under submission and acceptance, section 320.05. And we're just inserting, a sentence here. I'll read the existing language and then the inserted language. This is existing. The date of acceptance recorded in the minutes begins a 65-day review period, inserted, except for projects of regional impact, which will have a 95-day review period. Again, exactly as we spoke of before, projects of regional impact now get another additional 30 days for review. And then we're going down to section 320.07, action on a completed application. And once again, we're inserting language where it says the board shall act to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove.
Yeah, it appears as though the 320.07, I don't see it.
No, I don't
It's
either.
it's on the next page.
5 and
Is it on the
7?
next page?
It's after 9.
Oh, it's,
We have
Oh,
9.
okay, I get it.
Where is it?
It got,
It's on page 7,
it's here,
Did it flip around?
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
See it?
sorry.
I go from 4 to 9. 320.4.
Go to page 9. I mean 7.
they're
7.
just
Did I see
scanned backwards.
9? Then 320.10.
It must have been double-sided and
Go to
flipped.
the next.
Yeah, go to the
Next
next page.
page?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, it just got out of order. Okay, good. Yep,
Right.
Okay.
okay.
So once again, all we're doing is reflecting
no,
that you
that's
have an
good.
additional 30 days. And then moving on down to the next paragraph in that same section, once again, we reference the 95 days for projects of regional impact. And then once again, we have this exact same language, the selectmen shall certify on the applicant's application that the plat is approved, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through all that again. It's exactly what we discussed under site plan. And then going down to section 320.08 under approval. And once again, we're inserting the language that says the decision shall include specific written findings of fact that support that decision. And then I'm following my script, not yours, so hopefully I don't know where you are in pages, but we're on to section 320.10. That is disapproval. And once again, we're putting in the language that says, if the board determines that it lacks sufficient information to make a final decision on an application, and the applicant does not consent to an extension pursuant to section 320.07, the board may in its discretion deny the application without prejudice, in which case the applicant may resubmit the same or substantially similar application. And then once again, if application is not approved, the specific findings of fact, that's the awkward language. The specific findings of fact for disapproval will be clearly stated. I should actually strike out the words that say reasons for, so that it reads, the specific findings of fact for the disapproval will be clearly stated. So I should strike out that word reasons. I'll make a note of that. And then moving on, now this was something that we discussed. This is not related to 1661. This is section 850.11, which is recording. What the existing language says is any plan that basically, I'll read the whole sentence so it makes sense, the whole paragraph. Upon a vote by the majority of the planning board to approve a subdivision plan, the application shall be deemed to have final approval, and the subdivision shall be signed by the chairperson of the board and shall be filed with the board secretary and/or code enforcement officer. Any plan not so filed within 30 days of the date upon which such plan is approved and signed by the board shall become null and void. In addition, the plan signed shall be recorded in the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds within 60 days of the vote to approve the plan. What we discussed was that 60 days may not be adequate in a number of cases, and so we extended it to 90 days. So the 60 days is now proposed to be 90 days of the vote to approve the plan. Plans are not valid until recorded at the Registry of Deeds. The planning board by vote may extend the filing period for good cause. And I believe,
That was, you have up to 90 days to record the plan?
yes.
Yeah.
After the board approves it. Right now, it says 60 days.
That could be tough, too.
It could be tough, too. The board can extend that period,
Yeah, so
but, yeah.
I guess the question is, what's good cause? What defines good cause?
Well, right, so what it's basically saying is that if the plan has been approved by the board and it hasn't been signed within 90 days and recorded, then you gotta bring it back to the board, and the board needs to discuss why. We can, so
The
there, I'm
problem
sorry,
comes into is like a driveway permit. It could take you 6 months to get a so when you see a plan, someone might not have their driveway permit because of their off-site improvements that they have to do, but they don't wanna spend, as a developer, you don't wanna spend all the money doing the engineering for the off-site improvements. You're gonna do the on-site, but you know that you've submitted a conceptual plan. That's, still could be tough to get that done
Could
in
be.
90 days. I'm just saying that's definitely a tough one.
I don't know if there's any magic to the 60 or to the 90.
Yeah.
I think it's probably, I think this provision is in here because there's some sense that after a plan has been approved, I think the board assumes, public probably assumes it's moving forward and gonna get signed and recorded, and at some point, if it's hanging out there and that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I'd like to, like, that limit should be more on the planning board side than the developer side. Like, we can always extend it if we need
Yes.
to, but it's more to hold, I think, the board accountable.
Well, if you approve a plan subject to a variance, then like the zoning board, like in this town, it could be 6 months before you have a quorum.
Well, I think, but that's like, it's just that much more of an initiative, right? Then it's not just one person kind of pressing the zoning board to try to get something, to at least get together for a meeting. Then it's also planning board coming in and saying, hey, we need this done because we have a limit here too.
Well, if you don't get a quorum, you don't get a quorum.
But the state approvals is a big problem. We have one that's sitting in the office waiting for state approvals because they didn't apply till they got approved by the planning board. And it's been way more than 90 days.
Yeah.
That's always gonna be a
Okay.
problem. You know, not that they didn't do it with me, but when the gas station comes, they got the same thing. They're not gonna design their off-site improvements until
They know
you
they're
give them
approved.
approval.
Yeah,
They're gonna
That
come
makes
up with this conceptual plan,
yeah.
and the state's seen it, but the design's not done. And is that something you have to do?
It's in the regulations now. Now it says 60 days. Pretty clearly, we're not following that 60 days rigidly, so there was a discussion and 90 was what came out as kind of a compromise. Is there a magic to that? No. I think it comes down to what makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have an issue extending it as long as it's not causing delays for as long as it's not this board causing delays for the developer.
What is the sentence that's in italicized there? 851.1, you read it went from 60 to 90 days in the first paragraph, right? And then it says approved plan shall be signed by the chair of the planning board within the
That's
registry of
existing.
deeds.
Yeah.
That's 60, that's true? You want that? Is it
Well,
supposed to-
no, that would be 90 as well.
Okay, so that has to change.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't understand why it was 90 above and 60 there.
It is kind of weird that it's repeated. It looks like an explanation, not substance,
So
but
is
you're
that gonna
right.
be-
You're right, that should be 90 days.
Okay.
Again, if that's the will of the board.
Shouldn't it be in sync?
Well, it makes sense to be consistent, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, if the board thinks 90 makes sense, in other words, is that what we want to do?
I mean, we approve it and then we don't really see it during these 90 days, so I'm more leaning on you guys, what you think is, what makes sense.
I mean, Mike and Joan probably know the best as to how long it takes.
Yeah.
There's been several that have, they don't get their conditions met, and they can't record till the conditions are met. And one was a variance, and the other one's the state permits.
And what's the time period that we're looking at?
When was Corning Farm approved?
Yeah, that was a couple months ago.
I don't remember how many months ago.
You're never gonna get it in 90 days if you gotta get a state permit, and if you wait to do your engineering until the plan's approved, you're never
Right.
gonna do it.
Well, you could go 180.
Should we just
180.
Yeah.
go to,
Oh, you need an
6 months
update,
ago for
some,
there?
you know, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, because that's part of the point is the board can extend that if there's, for good cause. At some point, the board might want to know.
okay. So, is it 90 days and we just need to be better about bringing it back to the board for, that extension?
Yeah, but I mean, again, I guess my question is, what's good cause? I mean, when you say good
Well, if
cause,
they don't have state permits, they can't
okay.
record it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it varies, but in my view, absolutely, if it was subject to getting alteration of terrain or driveway permit and the state hasn't issued it, that's not their fault. In other words, that's not their failure. I think that's what this
Okay.
is really a
Maybe
guard
that's-
against,
maybe that's
is
what good cause
the
means then.
applicant was supposed to do something and they just never did it.
Yeah, which wouldn't be, what are you saying?
Well, that would be up to the board, but
Right, no,
I think
but I'm
that's what
saying
this
if
is
we-
trying to protect against, is to say at some point, if there's conditional approval, and, so for example, if they've never applied for the permit, that's different than they've applied
Applied
and
and
they're
they're not
waiting
getting
and
it
waiting
because
and
of-
waiting, right.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
So we're gonna make those both 90? Does it make sense to have one less?
No, it doesn't, they should both be the same. But again, that's if you want to change it to 90.
But isn't the burden on the applicant to come in and say, we didn't make it, we have to come back in? We have to update the board or send a letter in or something.
Yeah, I mean,
The board doesn't know.
by vote may extend. Yeah, because we'd have to know what the situation is, and then you'd have to come before us, and then we'd have to say, okay, we're gonna have to
Right.
vote to extend it, you know.
Because we conditionally approve it and we never see it again, right?
Right.
We've had people with conditions, 20 of them, and
Unless the conditions change.
Right.
But we don't
So
know.
If you approve something with a condition that they need a variance, they need a driveway permit, unless any of that changes, then whatever the conditions were, if they didn't meet all the conditions you put in, then they have to come back to you.
That has happened.
can we add it to our status report to see which ones are open and how old they are? Like, I'm not, do we have a lot in the queue? I mean, I don't want it to be,
Just one,
20.
we have one.
you know, is it like 5 or under usually? Projects that we could at least see if it's aging, getting up to the, like, we sent them out conditionally, right? For 90 days, whatever, we're gonna make this number. We can at least see that it's not
Right.
being met.
It sounds like Corning Farm is the one that's
Seems
hanging
to-
out
yeah.
there.
And,
Oh,
yeah,
they don't
they'll-
have it, they don't get their driveway permit
I
yet?
just don't know if
they do
that's a
five
lot of
full
work for
alterations
Joan.
of terrain till after they get
That's how we
approved,
could
so
tell,
I
right,
don't
if it's
have
on
all
our
that time.
report.
Alteration of terrain? Oh, that's usually 6 months.
Yeah, so, there you go.
So would it make more sense if this is 180 days?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would.
6 months for
180
conditional
days.
approval? So is that a tough thing to do on our agenda item, if just list the 5 projects that are going on in town or whatever, and just see if they're,
No.
because you can always put closed or it's met, you know, so we know
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then if we can see it's coming up against 90 or 180 days, whatever they're gonna pick.
Yeah, can make it 180. That would be,
I mean, if it's
So-
6 months, you know, I mean,
But was Kate's point to make sure, I mean, we have to, obviously, this reality, but we wanna make sure it's not in our court, that somebody else has
Well,
it.
once you
Right.
give a conditional approval, then
Right. It's not- we can't see it.
And then we wait till the conditions are met before.
but certainly if, I mean, we could argue dates, but I would certainly say if the board has granted conditional approval for something and it has not, they have not satisfied those conditions of approval in 6 months, it's probably a good idea for the board
Yeah,
to know that and understand why.
And then they would come in and we would see if it's good cause.
Yeah,
And
you
if it's-
just, yeah, you just understand why, and,
And if they didn't file a permit, not good cause, oversight. But what would happen if they just, I'm not saying the project died on the vine, but something happened when they rescinded or something?
well, if they have failed to act,
Yeah.
if the board finds that the conditions have not been met, plan has not been signed within, and under this scenario, 180 days, so 6 months, and the board doesn't find that, doesn't agree to extend the period, then this says the plan becomes null and void.
So we want them to be successful, we just want to know what happened after they left here, to see if they're
Right.
going to meet the conditions, yeah.
Right. It also protects you against somebody who's just kind of abandoned the project,
Right.
abandoned the plan, the approval's hanging out there, and, they don't come back at all.
So that'll
That
be
could
on our
happen
report
too.
then, right? It goes over the 180 days, and then we can address that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
so 180. I think.
All
right, yeah,
6 months is a
I'll-
long
I'll
time,
cha-
but I
I'll change it to
understand
180.
I do, I understand that. I do now. All right.
And that is the last of the changes.
Does that need a motion if this is the public hearing?
Yes.
amend that? So I'll make a motion to amend that, to 180 days.
Should we open it up to public hearing first, and then?
Up to public comment, yes.
I think we
Oh,
should,
sure.
yeah,
Okay,
so
I'll
what I'm
rescind
gonna do
my
right now,
motion.
because this has sort of been discussion, but I'm gonna open it up to public comment, these changes that have been addressed this evening. Does anyone have any comments?
Anything else?
Or wouldn't supposed to.
Appreciate your input either way.
But, please, now's the time.
That section.
Right. No, okay.
Oh, Are we violating the 1661 by making that, you went 90 days because of, that bill was 1661?
No, this has nothing to do with the statute.
Okay.
This was just
Because everything
our
else
own
seems to bump
internal.
up 30 days, so I'm gonna make
Right.
sure. All right, so this is not, we're going against
That's right.
a state, okay, right. Sorry about that.
So, I guess,
Did you close public?
well, I'm just about to do that.
Okay.
So I don't hear any members of the public, so I will close public input on this item, and I'll bring it back to the board. Now, did you want to vote to?
So now I will make the motion
Okay.
to amend that to 180 days. That's section 850.1.1.
Okay, I have a motion by Kate. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Ron. Do we have any discussion?
I just wanna make sure it's gonna be where it's listed twice, once,
Yes.
both paragraphs, right?
Yes, both paragraphs.
Yep, good.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 400. Change.
And then I think you could make, if it's a will of the board, you could make motions to approve the revisions to the site plan regulations and subdivision regulations as amended.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion by Kate, I have a second by Ron. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the site plan and subdivision regulation changes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 400. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jay. There we go. Well done. Okay. All right, so that concludes our public hearing on subdivision and site plan. Moving on to committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Kim? Have a good evening. Take care.
Let's see, today's date, no, okay, capital improvement, there's a plan committee, meets November 7th, which is Monday, 6 PM here at the town hall. We're working on the final SIP plan, and then afterwards, we will be working on impact fees. Voting day is November 8th, the next day. I don't think the town hall's open, is it? Or you probably have a skeleton crew, yep. Okay. The Board of Selectmen's next meeting is November 14th. That's on a Monday at 6:30 PM here at the Town Hall. And the Nashua Regional Planning Commission next quarterly meeting is Wednesday, December 21st at 7 PM at Nashua, at their headquarters in Nashua at 30 Temple Street. And that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Conservation Commission will meet this Thursday night here, or is it in Town Hall or the fire station?
Town hall.
Town Hall at 6:30. And the Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee meeting is going to be meeting on, I believe, November 30th at 7 PM in City Hall in Nashua.
And they're looking for three more people.
And they are looking for 3 more, well, actually, yeah, they're looking for extra members to join. Since I am one of the representatives to Litchfield, I guess we're looking for 3 more or 2 more. So if anyone has an interest in that, please reach out to, I guess, the town administrator or Joan McKibben or anybody on the Board of Selectmen and so forth. So we encourage you to join us for that. The CIP is meeting on November 7th. We are going to be actually presenting the plan to the planning board November 15th. That is the scheduled date. So we will be doing it that night, and we'll have a PowerPoint presentation for the planning board. And that's about it. Kate, do you have anything?
The budget committee last week, I have some unfortunate news, but, oh shoot, I'm sorry. This is gonna ring in a second, okay. But due to the tax cap and how far, inflation and everything has put the town over the tax cap. There had to be cuts made to every single department. So we needed to, the budget committee cut $2,000 from the NRPC, contract line, based on the past few years of
We haven't been hitting
spending.
it.
We haven't been hitting the
Yeah.
$18,000 cap, so
Okay. All right.
that's, and then I think our next budget committee meeting, I believe, is where are we at? November 10th, I believe.
And is that the school or the town?
That's school, but this week is, joint school board and budget committee meetings. They're technically school board meetings that the budget committee are invited to.
I see.
So that's actually tonight and Thursday, but there's no action done by the budget committee, so.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the October 18th, 2022 minutes. Did anyone have an opportunity to take a look at those? I believe those were done by Mr. Sullivan. Thank you very much. Well done. I thought they looked fantastic, by the way. So, anybody have any questions about those? Make
Could
a
I
move.
just add in,
Yeah.
on page 2, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph, after Chad Brannon's name, he's from Fieldstone Land Consultants, PLLC.
Okay,
That's all.
all right. Anything else? I entertain a motion to approve as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Kate. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the approval of the October 18th, 2022 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 4-0-0. And again, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, great job. Okay. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Kate, I know you wanted to.
I was hoping to see if we
I
could get
knew
an
this one.
update on the Albuquerque, study.
I do not have an update, but that'll remind me to check out with the
Okay.
engineers.
Okay.
Thank you. And then, I think I missed the conversation earlier, but the, home occupation ordinances, is that are we expecting to see that for this year's warrant, or do you think that'll be more in
I
the
think
spring?
I think it's up to the board, but we did discuss it, and I can bring some drafts to if we want to talk about it in December, then I could bring them for the December meeting, and we could decide whether we want to move forward.
Okay. I think we should, just because it's so light already this year, at least
Yeah.
talk
It
about
is
it,
light,
even
but
if
I'd
we
like
don't-
to see a draft because
Yeah.
Oh,
I
no,
want to
of
make
course.
sure we're not violating
So-
federal law.
We could, review them then, and then if we think it makes sense, we could decide to move them to first public hearing, which would be the first meeting in January, if that's what we wanted to do.
Okay.
Can't believe we're thinking about that already.
I know.
And I'll do the same. I'm going to bring forward something, on the inclusionary zoning.
Okay.
From the towns that I kind of pulled from, I'll put something together that I think makes sense for us, and then we could talk about it as, whether or not it's something worth putting forward or not.
And I'll at least circulate again what we talked about last year in the northern
Yeah.
commercial zone, and we can decide whether that's something we want to pursue or not.
Okay.
Oh, that's right, the
And did
subcommittee.
you want, yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, did you
Right.
wanna
Almost,
touch on that?
I didn't write it down, that's why.
That's all right.
So I think we need to, we had talked about the village overlay, and I think that's something that more people would have input on.
Mhm.
And I think we should at least make an effort to, create a subcommittee for that, and if it doesn't pan out, we can always just work through it ourselves, but I'd like to at least invite the public to a formal subcommittee. And I just don't know when we would want to, I guess, kick that off. I don't know if we're ready for, if we say, hey, come to the subcommittee, I would at least to have, what we had talked about last year, as far as the village overlay sort of
I mean, it's certainly a pretty good starting point.
Yeah.
And is that something that, do we need to do a little more prep work ourselves first before inviting a subcommittee, you think?
I need to do a little research on it.
Okay.
And then, but I do like the idea of a subcommittee, because I think people from the, citizens will bring in some great ideas.
We could
Different
even look
points
at
of view.
At an off planning board Tuesday, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
Is
Because
that
we
something?
kind of
Good
did that
idea.
when we did the warehousing, remember? We kind of did that, something to that effect, and we had, we
Yeah,
met.
we spent a lot of time on
Really?
that, too.
Yeah.
Looking at
Is
it.
that, is December
That's a
too soon
year
for
ago.
something like that?
Hmm?
Is December too soon?
Well, I think we have, next week is it Olson's Farm? We're booked,
Yeah.
right?
Right,
And then we
and
have
then
the
we have
SIP,
the
we have the SIP plan
I
I
coming
think
in, right?
December we would have to do it, so if we want to talk about it as a board on December 6th, maybe we could look at a subcommittee on the 13th, if that, I don't know how that date works for people.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and check
I
calendar,
might be
but
available.
Right.
I'd at least like to see it on the agenda for the sixth, I think.
Yeah, let's
That's a
agenda
good
for the
idea.
6th,
Yeah.
and then, if we think subcommittee makes sense, maybe that's, we don't have to decide right now, but we could look at calendars, but, maybe the 13th is a good date to do it.
Okay.
Because then that has the advantage of giving us one more planning board meeting before the January meeting, which would have to be the first public hearing on any zoning amendment.
Okay.
When is the home occupancy
Same
planned?
thing, we'll do the,
The 6th, same
we can
day?
talk about them all, on the 6th.
Okay, good. All
And
right.
then we would have, and then, of course, the board could vote to move anything they wanted to on the 6th to public hearing on the 20th. Or you could vote on the 20th. The public hearing would be January 3rd.
They're big topics, though.
Yeah, I don't think we would.
Yeah.
have any-
Well, yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
home occupancy, maybe, but I'm not sure about that village, Especially if a
Yeah.
committee's gonna be formed,
I
It would
agree
be a
with
lot.
it's all
And isn't that the
right.
master plan too you were mentioning had to be updated? It's not just ordinances, you
Oh,
want
yeah, I
the
mean,
master
that's where
plan.
that's rolling
There's a lot of
too,
stuff,
but
yeah.
the most timely is, anything that's going to town meeting is the most
Right.
timely.
That's the only thing.
Right,
The
I
gas
know, we're
station
running.
comes in this week, did we have to be accepted within 30 days?
Wow, yeah, oh yeah, we'll have to put them on for December. We can still agenda these,
Mhm.
though, and if
Yeah.
we do what we can.
Right.
So maybe on the sixth, we just come up with goals for the subcommittee, or what we'd like to see out of it.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
That makes sense.
I think that's, a starting point. Okay, very good. Any other business? Joan, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. Kim, do you have anything?
I was questioning about the Albuquerque signage, just, I'm not sure, I don't hear Jay's response. What was about the Albuquerque signage? You had a firm that looked at it.
Oh, VHB, I'll double check with them and see where they are.
Okay. Yep. That was, but I think Kate got that as well, so.
Anything on the grant applications? Are they still being submitted to DOT or for review?
Is that end of November they look at that? New Hampshire DOT?
Yeah, well, actually, that is something we should think about. So yes, everything has been submitted for the 10-year plan to DOT. They'll now go through their process of reviewing it. And then they will come back to us with the results of their review. And then ultimately, it'll go to the full NRPC commission in March for a vote. And then it goes back to DOT. The one thing to note, and I was gonna, talk to you, Kim, offline, Kim, but, letters of intent for the next CMAQ grant round, which are the congestion mitigation funds, those are due Friday. It's not a full application, it's just a letter of intent, but I really do think it would make sense for us to put the Pinecrest sidewalk in, because that grant program is targeted towards alternative transportation, basically. It's broader than some of the other grants, but, bicycle pedestrian improvements feature heavily. We've done all the work already. We already submitted it for the 10-year plan. It didn't make the cut, but all that work is done, so it'd be a light lift to get a letter of intent in, so we might as well get it in.
So, do I reach out to you? and
Yeah, I'll
Kim?
talk to you offline. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy to try, pull it
Yep.
together.
Yep.
Um,
I have one class in the morning, and then I can hit you in the afternoon. And then Thursday, Friday, it's due Friday, so, all right. Can I touch base with you in the afternoon tomorrow?
Yeah,
And then
I
I'll
think we
let
have
Kim
all the
Kleiner know.
materials, so that's why it's easy. We have costs, we have maps, we've got, it's pretty easy to pull together. We've
That'd
got
be
all the
nice.
letters of support that we had for the last application, so.
Just take the name off. Replace it.
That reminds me,
Thank you for the reminder, Kim.
yes, thank you. Is there any trainings coming up for planning and zoning? Was there something that,
Yeah,
I thought I saw something.
16th and 17th.
16th and 17th of November?
Ed, was it an NMA,
So,
NHMA?
so there's a municipal association annual conference. That's 2 days, and there are different trainings. There's several different classes and workshops throughout the day, so it would be worth circulating that to everybody just to see, and it's worth signing up if you can. I'll be going. I won't be going all day for
Right.
both days, but there are.
Where is it this year?
So it's whatever they're calling it now. What was the center in New Hampshire?
Oh, is it the?
I think it's the Doubletree.
Doubletree.
Yeah, the Doubletree.
In
now.
Manchester.
Name changes every few
It
years.
used to be the Radisson, and, I think it's the Doubletree, that's right. Okay. Good. Yeah, I recommend, if you guys have the opportunity to.
There's some worthwhile
There's some
stuff.
great stuff on those,
I usually like the court one. There's usually a good
The
legislative
decisions
one,
and-
and then there's a Supreme Court roundup or whatever they call it.
Right.
That's usually pretty good.
Ben Frost, I think.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Okay, great. All right, I have no other business for this evening, unless anyone else does. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
For discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 4-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you on the 15th of November, and get out and vote. Have a good night.